Indiana has a landlord-friendly late fee framework with minimal state-level regulation, giving landlords broad discretion while still requiring basic reasonableness. The governing law is found in Indiana Code Title 32, Article 31, which covers landlord and tenant relations, along with general contract principles. If you're a landlord or tenant in Indiana, the state provides basic structure, but the lease governs most late fee details. Let's start with the basics. Indiana does not impose a specific statutory dollar cap or percentage cap on late fees. There is no statute that limits the fee to a certain amount or percentage of rent. The fee is governed by the lease terms and general contract principles. Indiana does not mandate a grace period by statute. There is no state law requiring a specific number of days before a late fee can be charged. If your lease says rent is due on the 1st and a late fee applies on the 2nd, that's enforceable under Indiana law. However, standard practice among Indiana landlords is to include a grace period of 3 to 5 days. The key legal principle is reasonableness under Indiana contract law. A late fee is a liquidated damages provision, and Indiana courts have addressed liquidated damages extensively. Under Indiana law, a liquidated damages clause is enforceable if the damages from the breach are uncertain or difficult to calculate, and the amount fixed is a reasonable estimate of the probable loss. If the amount is grossly disproportionate to the actual or probable loss, the provision is treated as an unenforceable penalty. Indiana's approach to liquidated damages is pragmatic. Courts look at whether the fee amount bears a reasonable relationship to the landlord's actual or anticipated costs. Administrative time, follow-up communication, additional accounting, bank fees, and the time value of money are all legitimate components. A fee that roughly corresponds to these costs is enforceable. A fee that dramatically exceeds them is a penalty. What's reasonable in Indiana? The state has a moderate to affordable rental market. Rents in Indianapolis typically range from $800 to $1,400. Fort Wayne, South Bend, and Evansville are more affordable. Smaller communities are lower still. A flat fee of $25 to $60 or a percentage-based fee of 5 to 10% of the monthly rent is generally defensible. A $50 fee on a $1,000 Indianapolis rent is 5%, well within the reasonable range. The lease must clearly state the late fee terms. Indiana courts expect written agreement. The lease should specify the rent due date, any grace period, the exact fee amount or formula, when the fee triggers, whether additional charges apply for continued non-payment, and whether the fee is defined as additional rent. Oral agreements about late fees are difficult to enforce and invite disputes. Indiana's Deceptive Consumer Sales Act, found in Indiana Code Title 24, Article 5, prohibits unfair or deceptive business practices. While the act primarily targets consumer sales, it can apply to residential rental transactions in certain circumstances. Systematic overcharging of late fees, particularly if the fee terms weren't properly disclosed, could be challenged under this framework. The act provides for actual damages, treble damages in cases of deception, and attorneys' fees. Compounding late fees in Indiana must satisfy the reasonableness standard. A single one-time fee after the grace period is the most defensible approach. If your lease includes daily or weekly charges, the total must remain reasonable. A compounding structure that could accumulate to 20% of the monthly rent within a few weeks would likely be struck down as a penalty. Most Indiana landlords use a single flat fee. The interaction between late fees and the eviction process in Indiana is governed by Indiana Code Title 32, Article 31. Indiana requires the landlord to provide a 10-day notice for non-payment of rent before filing for eviction. The 10-day notice gives the tenant an opportunity to pay and cure the default. Whether unpaid late fees can be included in the 10-day notice depends on how the lease defines them. If the lease defines late fees as additional rent, they can be included in the total amount demanded. If treated as a separate charge, the landlord may need to pursue them independently. Best practice: define late fees as additional rent. If the tenant pays the full amount owed within the 10-day period, including compliant late fees, the eviction stops. The cure amount must be accurately calculated. An inflated demand that includes excessive fees gives the tenant grounds to challenge the notice. Indiana's eviction process through the small claims courts is moderately paced. After the 10-day notice expires, the landlord files a complaint and the court schedules a hearing. The amount claimed must be accurate at every stage. Non-compliant late fees can be challenged by the tenant and can complicate the proceedings. Indiana limits the security deposit to 1 month's rent. The deposit must be returned within 45 days with an itemized list of deductions. Unpaid late fees can be deducted if the lease authorizes it and the fees are reasonable. Failure to return the deposit within 45 days can result in the landlord being liable for the full deposit amount plus attorney's fees. For tenants receiving housing choice voucher assistance, common in Indianapolis, Fort Wayne, and other Indiana cities, landlords should not charge late fees when the housing authority's portion is delayed due to processing. The tenant cannot control the authority's payment timeline. If the tenant's portion is paid on time, the fee should apply only when the tenant's own payment is actually late. Indiana's military population is centered around several installations. Naval Support Activity Crane in Martin County is one of the Navy's largest inland installations. Grissom Air Reserve Base near Peru, Camp Atterbury near Edinburgh serves as a National Guard training center. The SCRA applies to any active duty service member renting in Indiana. Indiana's major employers drive specific late payment dynamics across the state. The automotive industry, including the Subaru manufacturing plant in Lafayette, the Toyota plant in Princeton, and numerous parts manufacturers across central and southern Indiana, employs a large workforce. Auto workers typically have stable income on a bi-weekly pay schedule. Late payment from this demographic is uncommon when the industry is operating normally. But industry downturns, plant shutdowns, or supply chain disruptions can temporarily affect payment patterns. The pharmaceutical and life sciences sector, concentrated in Indianapolis around Eli Lilly and Company, provides well-compensated professionals who rarely trigger late fee enforcement. Indiana's agricultural economy influences late payment patterns in rural communities, particularly during the transitional periods between planting and harvest, when cash flow may be tighter for farming families. From a practical standpoint, Indiana has one dominant metro and several secondary markets. Indianapolis is the state's largest and most active rental market. The economy is driven by healthcare, including IU Health, Ascension St. Vincent, and Community Health Network, pharmaceuticals, logistics. Indianapolis's central location makes it a major distribution hub, motorsports, and education. Rents in desirable Indianapolis neighborhoods, Broad Ripple, Fountain Square, Mass Ave, Carmel, Fishers, typically range from $900 to $1,500. Most Indianapolis landlords charge flat fees of $35 to $65 with a 5-day grace period. The professional tenant base generally pays on time. Late fee enforcement is standard but routine. The Indianapolis suburbs, Carmel, Fishers, Westfield, Zionsville, Greenwood, Noblesville, have strong markets with professional tenant bases and low late payment rates. These suburban markets are among the most desirable in the state. Fort Wayne, Indiana's second-largest city, has a moderate and affordable market driven by defense, including General Dynamics, healthcare, manufacturing, and education. Rents are lower than Indianapolis, typically $700 to $1,100. Late fee amounts should reflect the lower rent levels. South Bend, home to the University of Notre Dame, has a moderate market with some university influence. Notre Dame's employment provides stable demand. Student housing near campus follows academic cycles. Evansville has a moderate market driven by healthcare, manufacturing, and the University of Southern Indiana. Lafayette, home to Purdue University, has a tight student market combined with Subaru manufacturing demand. Bloomington, home to Indiana University, has a tight student market where financial aid timing affects early semester payments. Terre Haute, Muncie, Anderson, Kokomo, and smaller Indiana communities have affordable markets with varying economic conditions. Muncie and Anderson have experienced manufacturing decline that has softened their rental markets. The Indiana Dunes and Northwest Indiana, Gary, Hammond, East Chicago, Crown Point, Valparaiso, have markets influenced by proximity to Chicago. Many Northwest Indiana residents commute to Chicago for work. Rents and payment patterns reflect the Chicago metro dynamic. One best practice for Indiana landlords: set your late fee at a level that's meaningful but defensible under Indiana's liquidated damages standard. In Indianapolis, where rents range from $900 to $1,500, a fee of $40 to $70 is the sweet spot. In more affordable markets like Fort Wayne or Evansville, $25 to $50 is appropriate. A percentage-based fee of 5 to 8% automatically scales. Another best practice: include a grace period of at least 5 days, even though Indiana doesn't mandate one. 5 days is industry standard, prevents disputes over minor delays, and demonstrates good faith. The grace period makes your fee provision more defensible if challenged, because the tenant had a meaningful opportunity to pay before the fee was imposed. A third best practice: keep your 10-day notice calculations clean. Indiana's 10-day notice for non-payment is your primary enforcement tool, and the amount demanded must be accurate. Include only unpaid rent plus compliant late fees defined as additional rent. An inflated demand wastes the 10-day notice period. If the tenant pays what they believe is owed but the amount demanded was wrong, you may need to start over. Get the math right the first time. For the complete guide to Indiana late fee laws, visit tenantscreeningbackgroundcheck.com. Subscribe to our channel for every state in our late fee law series.